Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The New York Giants select Abdul Carter with the #3 pick of the 2025 draft, and they also trade up to the #25 pick, selecting quarterback Jaxson Dart. So a very eventful draft for the Giants, and I'll give my opinions and thoughts, but like a pretty big one for the team, knowing that they, draft in Abdul Carter, what really could be a generational player, an edge from Penn State. Really it was kind of in terms of non-QBs, there's the Cam Ward side of things. He was the #1 overall selection by the Tennessee Titans. And then Travis Hunter went #2, but not to the Cleveland Browns, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They made a deal where they went from 5 to 2, Jacksonville, that is, and Cleveland got some future assets and some, further draft picks, including a first round pick next year. But the point is, it didn't affect the Giants. Really, we kind of knew going into the day that they were very likely to select Abdul Carter. And I have no problems with that pick. Now, again, it goes back to it's somewhat similar to last year, where the preference for me would have been to have lost some of those games down the stretch last year and this year. And, last year they missed out on Jaden Daniels or Drake May because of that. And then this year, Cam Ward. Now, Cam Ward, like, he's not as good as those guys. Cam Ward, if he were drafted in last year's draft, would have been a lot further down, right? No question about it. But that would have been, if I had my #1 pick, Cam Ward would have been my #1 selection. That aside, not a terrible consolation prize to end up with Abdul Carter, right? And like, it's something to be excited about. And somewhat similar to last year with Malik Neighbors at #6, but this possibly even more so. And I'm a huge Malik Neighbors fan, but this is someone who really can change this defense in a major way, who already does have a formidable defensive front, right? Led by Dexter Lawrence in the middle. But of course, you also have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. And Kayvon Thibodeau was uh, announced during the press conference after the Carter pick that the Giants will be picking up the fifth-year option on Kayvon Thibodeau, which is not a surprise. Has he been incredible his first 3 seasons? No, absolutely not. Um, but this is a move that makes sense. And to me, the idea of trading him or, oh, well, because you have him, you shouldn't draft Carter, to me made no sense. The best Giant teams that we've seen, whether it be in recent memory or further back, has been the Giants' ability to rush the passer. It is in, it's in the roots of the Giants. It's in their bloodlines. It really is. Like, it just seems to be that way. And bringing Carter into this mix, and really he will be, to me, the one that kind of leads that rush. I mean, of course, there's Dexter Lawrence, who has a little bit of a different role, but Abdul Carter was really, really, really dynamic at Penn State. Interesting thing with him is he grew up an Eagle fan. He's from Philly, grew up an Eagle fan, but in these situations, obviously that you put that in the past, and now he's a New York Giant. But this past season, I mean, 12 sacks, 24 tackles for loss for Abdul Carter in 16 games. Crazy. I mean, the numbers that he put up is insane. Look, you're hoping for it to somehow be a situation like Micah Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys that, he both from Penn State, both were #11. There's a lot of, parallels there. But who the hell knows, right? I mean, like, that is still um, a hard that is not something that can be easily replicated. And still, though, I think the Carter, it's just hard not to be excited about what he can bring to this team. And he seems excited to be with the Giants. Um, Again, you're getting a complete athlete, a lot of speed, a lot of explosiveness. Um, and he can kind of line up in a bunch of different positions and cause nightmares for the opposing quarterback. Great instincts. Um, and I'm just excited to see what he's going to look like in a Giant uniform. They need this badly. And so he would have been my preference over Travis Hunter. Really, I would have been fine if they got Hunter because, of course, with him, you have a crazy amount of potential with him playing on both sides of the ball. I don't know how that's going to go with Jacksonville, but, cornerback and receiver possibilities for Travis Hunter. Right. And so I wouldn't have been upset with that. But truthfully, Abdul Carter was the number one player I wanted besides Cam Ward, right? And we knew for a while that wasn't going to happen. And it came out that the Giants were looking to trade up to, with Tennessee for Cam Ward, which they weren't going to do. Apparently, they were looking to, Giants were willing to trade away next year's first round pick in order to do so. So clearly they felt highly about him, but it's kind of like last year with Drake May in New England. Why would they do that? Right? Like, it'd be one thing if it was like, let's say for whatever the reason this season, New England had the number one pick, then that's a different story. Then you may have been able to work a trade for a team that already has their young quarterback, but that's not the way it worked out. Tennessee decided that they were going to take a quarterback, and that was Cam Ward. The interesting thing, and we'll get into this more, Shedeur Sanders was not selected in round one. That's just, what it is. And so the Shedeur Sanders watch is going to be on for day two. And the Cleveland Browns, maybe they pick him with that first pick. Maybe. I think there's certain reason to believe that, but also, in these situations, like we're going to talk about the Giants with Jaxson Dart, typically you trade up for quarterbacks at this part of the draft. So I don't know for sure that the Browns are interested in Sanders. But again, that's not the Giants' problem, but it's more of just an overall thought. But for Carter, my thoughts are very, very excited about it. Like, very much so. Only 21 years old, sky high potential, right? And he's not going to turn 22 until the end of the season. 6'3", 250. Like, there's just this is you're hoping that he can be a cornerstone player for this team. And it was pretty fun. Like the idea of Andrew Thomas versus Abdul Carter, just in practice and training camp and things like that. That's the stuff in the competition that you're looking for. So this really, really is a major, major upgrade for this defense. Not only, for now and for the future, right? So there's that. Then as we move along, the Giants eventually trade up. And this is the one that I think is probably more of a discussion piece. The Carter thing was a no-brainer. Jaxson Dart. And I'm not the biggest fan of Jaxson Dart. He is an he's an Ole Miss quarterback. And so, of course, there's going to be the Eli Manning comparisons and thoughts. Jaxson Dart was with USC in 2021, didn't play much, transferred to Ole Miss and was their starter for the last 3 seasons. And in the past, he was the first team All SEC in 2024. There's mobility there. There is upside there, right? He was the second quarterback taken in the draft. Lane Kiffin's offense, it wasn't NFL style at all. That's a concern that I have. And I think he's probably going to sit out this year. To me, I think that it's like a redshirt season, which I'm fine with that. I really am. I think with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, we'll talk about the QB room a little bit, but I think the Jaxson Dart is probably not going to play much at all this season. Maybe the last few games, that would be at most. I think the plan there is to just have him watch and learn. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. We don't really see that much these days, but I think that's okay. It's very much looking towards the future, which I'm fine with that philosophy as well. And the trade itself, let's talk about the trade. I don't love the trade itself, but it's not look, if you love a quarterback, you have to do what you have to do to get him. And so what happens is the Giants move up 9 spots from pick 34 to pick 25. So it was the second pick of the second round into the latter end of the first round. Again, 9 spots up. They also trade the number 99 pick, which is late in the third round. That was the comp pick that they were awarded, which was a surprise. I think a lot of people thought that'd be more fourth round. So that was, a nice surprise that they got that late third round pick. And not only that, but the Giants trade next year's third round pick. So the way it goes is the Giants move up the 9 spots from 34 to 25. So it's the 25th pick, which is Dark, for 34, 99, and then next year's third round 2026 pick. And I don't think that is an egregious, I don't think it's wow, the Giants gave up crazy assets. I don't love it. I don't if you could draw it up the way you'd want it to, you would either just take Dart at 34 somehow, or Shedeur Sanders, in terms of from a value standpoint. But I'm not going to get hung up on that so much, right? It's more about the quarterback. And I'm just not the biggest fan of Jaxson Dart. And, it's not like I watched a crazy amount of him, but from the times I did, I just felt like in the clutch, he wasn't necessarily coming through in big moments. I feel like when things went haywire, he was not able to respond to that well. Things needed to be perfectly in place for him to deliver. And that did happen in Lane Kiffin's offense, but that's going to be a major, major difference in the NFL. And this is where Brian Dable's work really, really needs to come into play. And the interesting thing is, this could, in theory, save Dable's job, but Jackson Dart might not even play this season. Like, so it's one of those things where he's gonna have to teach him, but it's behind the scenes, right? Like, you're not really gonna be able to see it, in my opinion. Now, there's a lot that can happen as far as like the quarterback situation. One thing that isn't being talked about, and I don't think it'll happen, but the idea that Jameis Winston could be dealt before the regular season begins isn't like a complete zero. I don't think it'll happen, but we've seen things like that before. I think about the Jets when they drafted Sam Darnold, and I guess the quarterback room, I think that might have been McCown, Darnold, and Teddy Bridgewater, and they traded Teddy Bridgewater right before the season. So it's a little bit different because obviously Darnold was, a top end pick. He was the number what, 3 pick? So it is different. I don't think it's going to happen. Tommy DeVito, I think his spot on this giant roster is not in a great place. Again, not going to go into detail on that because again, Tommy DeVito to me, it's more of a fun story than anything. Like I don't really view him as anything serious as far as a future quarterback on this team, and they know that as well. So just talk about a very interesting, diverse quarterback room between Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, and Tommy DeVito. There's just a lot going on there, just off the field and personality wise and whatnot. There really is. But with Dart, the good thing is that he can run a little bit. I think that is important. I do like that. With Shador Sanders, that wasn't part of his game. Now, I would have preferred Sanders over Dart. Look, at number 3, I am so glad they didn't touch any of that. Not even a question. And really, to me as well, if I could have had it my way, I don't even know that I would have necessarily even taken one of these quarterbacks. This is coming from someone that is desperate for the Giants to have a future franchise quarterback, desperate for it. But it's too bad that they were kind of backed into a corner, given the fact that Shane and Dable are kind of in a situation where their jobs are very much on the line. Mara wants a quarterback, and I understand why. But again, I would have been fine. I mean, I really want a total top, end quarterback. And maybe Jackson Dart could be that. I hope that I'm wrong. But I just think that number 34 pick, and look, the number 99 one they gave up, those are high value picks. Not to say that Joe Shane would have, hit on those and been successful, but still, I guess the one good thing here is the Giants did not trade away that they had the number 1 third round pick, which is number 65, I believe. They were able to hold on to that. So that's the good news here is that like they traded the much lesser of the third round picks they had this year. So, so for tomorrow, just 1 pick for the Giants. No more number 34, no more number 99, just that number 65, number 1 pick of the third round. So day 2 for the Giants presumably will be a fairly quiet one, and we'll see kind of who they get at that point. But this is a real beyond noteworthy night for the Giants with Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart now with the Giants. Like, and the trade that was made, Dart is the future quarterback of the team. This is a first round pick, right? This is the number 25 first round selection. So, like, there is going to be a lot of scrutiny around this for sure, like for years to come. Like, Dart is going to be the guy. Now, look, is there still, I mean, that's the thing too, is like if the Giants end up with a bad draft pick next year, end up in the top end of it, I don't, I don't know if Dart prevents them from taking a quarterback. I guess like we'll have to deal with that then, right? And it depends on if Dart ever gets regular season action. But with him, as far as deep ball accuracy, he's not the greatest. He has a good arm, not a great arm. He, it's a nice looking ball. Like if you watch it, like he's got a nice delivery, like it looks good. Um, but I don't know. I didn't come away eye test wise overly impressed by Jackson Dart when I watched him, and just in terms of some of the stuff again in those big moments. I felt like there was some failures in some of these big SEC games, end of game disasters. Um, you know, LSU game, I think Florida as well. And, so look, Jaxson Dart, who would have thought he would have been a Giant? Not me. I'm asking that aloud. Not me. Like only until recently did it become even a possibility. I never would have thought that Dart, like, because really for the longest time, he was more projected to go later in the draft, it became a thing lately. There was some momentum building, very recently. And the Giants decide to pull the trigger on trading up for Jaxson Dart in a trade with the Houston Texans. And it sounds like they were trying to make this deal. Like it sounds like they were trying to move up, I guess, right around 22. I guess right around after the Steelers didn't draft Shedeur Sanders. It sounds like the few picks before they finally got him, they were in talks. They were gung-ho. They were dead set on doing this, and sure enough, they do. And that's the thing. Kind of going into this draft, I had a feeling, and I think a lot of Giant fans did, that like they were going to leave night one with Abdul Carter and a quarterback, and it turns out that Jaxson Dart. And I think Brian Dable is the one that really is a Dart fan. Not to say that Joe Shane isn't, but all indications make it seem like Dable pushed for this. And so, hey, that's his ass on the line. I mean, that is his ass on the line right there. And whether it comes to fruition with Dart, with Dable, we'll see. And that's the unfortunate thing. I don't want a future GM and head coach inheriting Dart. Like in a perfect world, somehow everything gets resolved with Dable and Shane when it comes to Dart. And that's a package deal with them. And I had this concern that if the Giants, where they get fired and you don't know anything about Dart, but they, put a first round pick on him. And so then it's like, all right, like you're kind of stuck with him, but maybe things go terribly wrong. Then Dart does find his way into games, even if he's not even necessarily ready. We'll see. There's so many question marks to this. And I think leaving this time, I think there should be overall excitement from Giant fans, especially for getting Carter. I think that's the big thing here. But like the Dart one is going to be the one that I think is where you're going to have more conversations, more controversy. But the Giants, really, Joe Shane, they do finally draft their quarterback. It feels a bit haphazard, but it has happened, right? Because Daniel Jones, of course, was Dave Gettleman. And now Jaxson Dart, this is Joe Shane and Brian Dable's quarterback. And we will see when he hits the field regular season-wise. I don't think anytime soon. But again, this is day one of the 2025 NFL Draft. And the Giants have selected EDGE Abdul Carter from Penn State with the number 3 pick. And they trade up from number 34 to number 25, 9 spots with the Houston Texans to grab Ole Miss quarterback Jaxson Dart. A very, very pivotal night for the future of the New York Giants.